Now, I've mentioned social media, obviously in relation to blogging as well, but I think people in business have very varying attitudes to social media. Some people are really into it, and they get sucked into it so much that they're probably not doing enough face-to-face interaction with people. But there are others who are very skeptical, who dismiss it as being irrelevant to their particular business, as being rather distasteful, as being not particularly their type of thing, and they associate it with Facebook and people giving rather distasteful or unprofessional tweets and Facebook updates. But of course, it doesn't need to be that way. And I think social media can be, and is an extremely powerful tool for you to build your presence within your particular domain. One example of this is that I mentioned before that I decided to be a little bit more strategic in my use of Twitter. And I spoke in London a few weeks ago at a conference, and I told a story which involved Peter Jones, or which featured Peter Jones from Dragon's Den. And Sarah and I met him about 3 or 4 years ago, and we had a very interesting and unusual encounter with him. Quite an unusual encounter, actually, that involved a misunderstanding. And I told the story, it went down very well, and the video of the presentation was sent to me after the conference. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, as Peter Jones is in that story, maybe it's worthwhile putting his Twitter address in a tweet that I sent out, highlighting the fact that a video has been produced. And lo and behold, he picked it up. He picked it up and he retweeted it to over 820,000 of his followers. Now, there was a time when to get access to 820,000 people, you'd have to spend an awful lot of money, and now it's free. But it's only going to happen if A, you have something to say that's worth sharing, and B, you recognise that there has to be some kind of reason why people will forward it on. So my message here is that if you're more opportunistic and you find reasons why people might want to share your stuff, rather than just simply asking them to share everything, you'll have more success with that particular strategy. And I think broadly speaking, in terms of using social media and why we should consider it seriously, again, like blogging, it's a free platform. It's increasingly the way people make buying decisions these days. They'll consider what other people are saying about you, and hold more store by that than they would what you're saying about yourself. If you read a website now, it's your own opinion of yourself on your website. But if you've got more opinions of other people, expressed either through your website or through, more generally through other forms of social media, then people do value those things, and they treat them more like, the gospel rather than necessarily what you're saying about yourself. The speed and breadth of social media is extraordinary. You can get something like the tweet that I mentioned spread instantly to an awful lot of people. I think it's important that you recognise it's two-way traffic. It's not just you saying things about yourself and pushing those out everywhere. It's also important that you do, contribute to other people's conversations, that you recognise their successes, their achievements, and little, status updates on LinkedIn, for example, where someone has won an award, or they've won a piece of business, or they've produced something interesting to read, should be recognised and valued by you, because that click of a button can help to enhance that relationship no end. Again, like blogging, it's not a quick fix. It's not something you can just start doing and get an immediate return from. You've got to be in for the long haul with this. It's gradually putting your footprint out there in the way that you communicate with people on these platforms that will help you generate some returns. And at the end of the day, social media, as somebody once said to me recently, it doesn't make you better or worse. It just amplifies what you really are. So it's simply a way of amplifying your true self, your true personality. So if your product or your service isn't great, then using social media will just basically put that message in more places. But if you're doing great stuff, it's a great way of having that story shared by the people that matter. I think you've got to decide why you're using it. Don't just start using social media because other people are. Learn a little bit more about it. Learn how, people are using it successfully. It's a good idea, the last point on this slide, is to model yourself on someone else who's using it well, so that rather than learning from scratch, you can actually get a fast start with this and learn some good practices and some good principles of using it properly. I think you've got to decide when you're going to use it. Try to organise your time so that you spend a certain amount of time, maybe a block of time here and there with your online activity. It's very easy to get sucked into it and end up doing nothing else. Don't forget that face-to-face time is equally important. You've got to balance the time you spend literally with people with the time that you're spending on your computer on your own. And remember that it's not all me. It's not just a case of you communicating what you want to say about you. It's a case of having some two-way traffic and of contributing to other people's contributions on the web, so that these are conversations rather than just simply you pushing stuff out on a one-way basis. And I think finally, if you're really interested in this kind of thing, there are a couple of online resources which are really, really impressive and very helpful. One's called Social Media Examiner, and the other is called HubSpot. So check them out. There's some great stuff in their content, and good luck with your social media activities.